are these people?
DC substitute teachers win big, continue struggle. Popularresistance.org. Morgan Atikahina and Michael Bierman from Liberation News, I think. So they're talking about that substitute teachers in DC public schools have won their first raise in 14 years. This comes after 5 months of picketing outside DC government offices under the banner of Washington Substitute Teachers United, demanding higher wages and benefits amid rapidly rising costs of living in the city caused by gentrification. Although having promised wage increases since February of 22, DC Mayor Muriel Bowser and Chairman of the DC Council Phil Mendelson blamed the delay on computer issues, while resulted in only a few substitute teachers receiving a raise. So what, did it just go like alphabetical? Like, you know, only like the A through C's got it? What happened? So during the bureaucratic mess, Washington Substitute Teachers United decided the only way to win was to struggle and launched their weekly pickets outside the John A. Wilson Building, D.C. City Hall. The Party for Socialism and Liberation joined them in the push, helping to organize a public pressure campaign online and in person, including an impromptu sidewalk meeting with Chairman Mendelson one morning as he passed the picket line. So, yeah.
Again, just real quick, this is kind of the organization. I mean, it's small, but it shows like there's intention there. There's uncompromising. They're uncompromising here, and it was strategic. You know, they went every single week. You know, so it was long term. So this is, I think, something very simple, but these are the kind of things that I think we need to do, you know, more so on the left consistently, especially with bigger issues, like having just one march or one, you know, sit out or whatever else is not going to cut it. You know, like you have to make it hurt, you know, for them in order for them to do something. So, you know, so this is exactly what, you know, Brother Touré was mentioning. And, you know, like the Party of Socialism and Liberation joined them in this. So they got the attention that they needed in order for that to make the demands met. So.
Like, I mean, the hard part for me is, and we've talked about this before with especially union efforts, but like politicizing the union effort to begin with, right? You know, even though it's the socialist, you know, like party for, you know, rainbows and sunshines, like someone might not like it, you know, like that's just the way it goes. So it's like, if you can get away with it not being attached to a party in any way.
But I think, to play devil's advocate, I think this is not like the Democratic or Republican Party, which I think are the big like parties. You know, this is a kind of more obscure, so it may not have that huge of an effect in this case. Like, I think it would be very different if we saw like AOC or like someone on the, like, let's say Ted Cruz, you know, coming into this. I think then I think that would be a lot more jarring. And we kind of talked about that, you know, regarding Chris Smalls. But this is like for alternate party. So
I don't mind it
in a
as
lot of
much.
ways it's better. I think in a way, because they're usually not running, like they don't have the same stink of partisanship than like an alternative party, third party does. So
no, absolutely. You know, but it continues that teachers receive a higher salary, and some of their salary depends on how long they have been in the system. A substitute teacher told Liberation News, teachers receive benefits, sick leave, annual leave, cost of living increases, and substitute teachers do not. Before May 6, 2022, sub teachers were paid $15 an hour beginning in 2008. Unfortunately, some of us received a $5 increase and some of us received a $10 increase solely based on the number of days a week we serve in the schools and not based on the quality of our work or experience. The DC government has yet to meet the demands of substitute teachers or offer them a true living wage. Washington Substitute Teacher United has demanded $35 an hour and full benefits. Just like other teachers, the DC government chose to offer them only a partial raise and create an arbitrary division between full-time, who will earn 10 more an hour, and part-time, who will receive only 5 more an hour. This is a clear attempt by the city government to divide the substitute teachers' struggle. However, Washington Substitute Teachers United rejected this attempt at division and responded with a message of unity. Keep fighting.
Yeah.
Yeah, finally. When asked why, one DC substitute teacher told Liberation News, "I have seen protest fights work since I was a teenager. One of the reasons I came to Washington, D.C. for college was to be around the people who are coming to D.C. from the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, the SNCC. Their fight was bigger than a pay increase. It was for human lives. In a sense, we are working for human lives as well. If people do not receive a living wage, they will suffer. Black people have been fighting in this country since we landed in 1619. We will continue to fight if we want to live. We are worthy."
Can I?
Yes.
Cool fact. Kwame Ture was involved with with the NCCC. So,
okay, bringing it full circle.
Bring it full circle. Indirectly, didn't even know that.
Didn't even know. We were working on it. Our brains were linked. Yes. When asked why, one DC substitute teacher told Liberation News, I just read this, did I not?
Yes, you did.
Why did it, what? Slides, what are you doing? The District of Columbia ranks among the nation's worst cities for rapid gentrification as luxury development displaces one working class Black community after another. The median rent in the city is $2,261 a month, meaning that to not be a cost burden by your rent, according to the Department of Housing and Urban Development, a resident would have to make $90,440 per year, or $43.50 per hour. This is unjust, and the fight for a living wage by DC substitute teachers is also a fight back against the capitalist forces of displacement and community destruction. DC substitute teachers have made it clear that struggle has brought these wins, and only struggle will win their full demands. Yeah. So, thoughts?
Very quick. As a teacher, first of all, shout out to substitute teachers generally, because I can never do that. The idea of going from school to school, you don't know what community you're going into and being able to teach. That's something, I'm not wired in that way. So shout out to substitute teachers for being willing to do that. Number one. Number two, as a teacher, we have it bad, but I think substitute teachers, and I think this article shows it, have it even worse, because it's almost kind of like they're considered second-class citizens in the education profession. And, and I think especially in DC, everything is just so fucking expensive here. It's like making $15 an hour. I mean, we talk about $15 an hour as a livable wage. That's what, 32 a year about? You can't, there is no way you can live on that in DC. Really, honestly, I don't know. You can't really live on that anywhere in the country at this point. Maybe down south, but even then, that's a stretch. So it's like, and I think especially given right now within the pandemic, I was sharing with my mom, earlier tonight, we're in the middle of standardized testing season, and pretty much they're teachers have to be in school in order to, get these standardized tests done. But teachers have been getting sick, due to COVID, and students are getting sick because now we're in this wave of students getting COVID. So every day we have teachers out that we are trying to figure out how are we going to finagle, coverage. Not my partner teacher, but my grade level colleague had to be alone today because the person who usually subs for us had to be in my classroom because I was interviewing principals for next year. And so it's just a whole mess. So it's just kind of there needs to be a lot more love, you know, for substitute, well, teachers in general, but I think especially substitute teachers, but the fact that like, you know, they were not getting that much money at all to begin with, I think it's just a slap in the face. So like shame on like, I hate Bowser like with a fiery passion. But I've also, but I love how, you know, they stuck to their guns and basically being like the amount that they were given, they're like, no, not good enough. And, you know, we're going to continue fighting to get the fullness of what we want. And I think that's a great example of like that subjecting yourselves to the crumbs that Democrats and or Republicans give you because, you know, it's in the eyes of it's better than nothing, you know, like, you know, if you value yourself, you go for the whole pie, you know, like
Yeah.
you deserve that, you know, so I rather try and get as much as I can versus just kind of settling for the little bit that they can give you. Because they show like if you're able to get that, if you're able to give a little bit, why not give more? And I think especially within the pandemic where substitutes are especially needed, you know, they need to be compensated appropriately, you know, especially living in DC.
I mean, what you could do is you just gotta like slide to the left, let Bowser fall in the hole, and then you like jump over and you get to the flag. No, and that's how this
Yeah.
works.
Well,
No.
I will say this also because we're middle of a memorial race in DC right now. Like our primary is next month. And there are a few candidates, you know, especially within my circles, you know, they're like, this person would be better for it than the other or whatever else. And, you know, like this is the struggle that I have. And this is kind of like something within local politics I don't think we talk about a lot. You know, I think especially given DC and its uniqueness, you know, like and then I think major cities in general, you know, especially on the East Coast, you know, you get rid of Bowser, fine, but the corporate interests are still there,
Yep.
you know, and I haven't really watched the Mario race too closely here, which I should, but I haven't. But I think a lot of it is, you know, like the corporate interest as far as the gentrification that has been happening in the city, you know, is going to continue regardless whether Bowser's there or not. And I haven't really heard anything from any candidate yet that really gives me any confidence that they're really going to do anything as far as like, especially for low income and the Washingtonians that have lived here that are being pushed out like to surrounding areas in Maryland, you know, because it's just way too expensive to be here in DC proper. Like I haven't heard anyone kind of speak to that, you know, so you can get rid of Bowser, but the root problem still exists. And so for me, it's like, and I'm going to take Symphony McKinney again, like people want a face change versus a regime change.
Right.
You know, this is a prime example of that, you know, like, so I'm kind of frustrated because no one's kind of speaking to the corporate interests that exist in DC that are not going to go away. And having one mayor removed and having another one and or others who claim to be, you know, like I'm progressive, you know, I'm grassroots, I don't take corporate money. You know, you are running as a Democrat in this city, you know, which to me is kind of like a huge red flag for me, you know, in terms of, you know, you're going to be susceptible to those capitalist interests. So I don't really trust anyone, honestly, who's going to come in as mayor. You know, they might do some tweaks around the edges, but I don't think it's going to be anything substantive. And that's my fear. You know, like I'm talking about this on the local level here. So, and I'm sure like there are other cities and even some towns throughout the country that have this problem, you know, so, and I don't really feel like anyone's kind of speaking to that too much. So I think that's definitely a conversation that we need to have more on the left because we talk about, you know, engaging in local politics. And yes, that's way more important in a lot of ways than federal. But for me with this issue is kind of like, well, what else are you supposed to do? So yeah, that's kind of like where I'm at, I think, in regards to that. But shout out to the substitute teachers and shout out for, like taking a stand and not accepting the crumbs, basically.
Yeah.